Being a mob boss is not a safe job. I would imagine that goes without saying. Like hopefully 99% of the people watching this, my only experience with that world stops at the TV screen, which would lead you to believe bosses getting assassinated is an almost daily occurrence. But believe it or not, there was an almost 35-year period where none of the head bosses of New York's infamous 5 families was murdered. In fact, it had been so long that the last time this happened, the order for the hit had been given by John Travolta. So when Frankie Boy Cali allegedly took over as the head of the Gambino crime family in 2015, he probably thought he was getting a pretty good deal. Things were relatively peaceful, so as long as he could avoid being arrested, which he admittedly wasn't great at, things were going to be fine. He could at least take comfort in the fact that there was almost no way another person in the mafia would try to have him killed. And he was right, but he was murdered anyway. On March 13, 2019, Cali's doorbell rang and he was greeted by a scrawny 24-year-old who had backed his truck up into Frankie Boy's Cadillac. Words were exchanged, presumably not friendly ones, then the stranger pulled a gun out and started firing at the mobster. Cali ran around his car trying to dodge the assailant's shots, but was struck 10 times and eventually fell to the ground dead. The killer then hopped in his truck as neighbors ran over to see what happened and drove off. Now, to no one's surprise, Cali's neighbors initially thought this was a murder tied to his organized crime dealings, a narrative news outlets ran with in the days following the murder. But some things didn't match up. This was very sloppy as far as mob hits went, with the killer literally ramming his truck into the boss's front yard in the middle of a crowded neighborhood. Also, news travels fast within the ranks of organized crime, and none of the other families were taking credit for the killing of Frankie Boy. Most importantly, police recognized the killer's truck as it belonged to someone who they dealt with a fair bit, Anthony Camello. Camello had several run-ins with the law during his young life. In fact, the morning of Frank Cali's murder, Camello had been given a parking ticket by an NYPD officer. So police decided to pay him a visit, but he was nowhere to be found. They eventually tracked him to New Jersey and arrested him a couple of days after the shooting. And this is where things get downright weird. Mr. Camello had no connections with the New York Mafia and denied having been contracted by anyone to kill Frank Cali. He initially told police that he wanted to date Mr. Cali's niece and that the alleged mob boss didn't approve, so he went to his home just intending to confront him. But after crashing into the Cadillac and apologizing to Mr. Cali, the mobster became angry and threatened Anthony, which resulted in the shooting. However, upon speaking with Camello's friends and family, police found out there was no such love interest and that he had instead fallen in love with Oxycontin and right-wing conspiracy theories, particularly QAnon. QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory that has become so prevalent online in recent years that YouTube is probably going to demonetize this video just for me having mentioned it. Its followers believe that the world is run by a cabal of demon-worshipping pedophiles, and that Donald Trump is the world's only hope of combating this evil threat. The central figure of the conspiracy theory outside of Mr. Trump is a mysterious figure known only as Q, who makes posts on anonymous forums like 4chan called Q Drops, which lets people know when the quote-unquote storm will come. The storm being a day where Donald Trump reveals his masterful 4D chess plan and arrests every one of the evil cabal members plotting to destroy freedom. It is an outlandish belief that has been thoroughly debunked several times over, with pretty much all of the fabled Q drops proving wildly incorrect, so I won't bother talking about it much here. Even Mr. Trump has distanced himself from the movement. But to be clear, I'm not saying everyone who supported President Trump believes this. It is a small portion of his voting base who have their voice amplified due to being very active online. But even a small portion of Donald Trump's voting base is still a lot of people, and there have been incidents where devoted followers of QAnon have taken their devotion offline and into the real world, one of these people being Anthony Comello. Mr. Comello was an extremely devoted follower of QAnon, and according to his friends and family, had become completely absorbed by the conspiracy theory in the months leading up to his shooting of Frank Cali. His Oxycontin addiction had also become severe, causing Anthony to have angry outbursts and exhibit violent behavior when he was unable to afford any pills. In fact, at the time of his arrest, he already had charges pending in which a female friend accused him of invading her home and beating her with the blunt end of a knife handle before tying her to a bed and stealing hundreds of dollars worth of items and cash from her home. Charges that Comello denied. He had also apparently contracted HIV at some point during these preceding months, after having sexual relations with a stripper while high on cocaine. In February, he had entered a federal courthouse in Manhattan and demanded New York Mayor Bill de Blasio be placed under arrest, along with other prominent left-wing politicians such as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Congressman Adam Schiff. These requests were of course rejected, and Mr. Comello was forcefully removed from the courthouse. How and why he ended up crossing paths with a New York mob boss a short time later was unknown initially. Most of Anthony's statements to police after his first interrogation were incoherent ramblings. At his arraignment, his lawyer entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and for the first time revealed something resembling an explanation for Mr. Comello's actions. Anthony believed that Frankie Boy was an associate of the elitist cabal that Donald Trump was battling with, and had intended to place him under citizen's arrest when he arrived at his home on March 13th. Mr. Cali had a hostile reaction to this, and that was when Anthony decided to pull his gun out and shoot the mobster. He believed that after his arrest he would be pardoned by then-President Trump, and would even enjoy the benefits of Secret Service protection for having dealt with one of the president's enemies. This, of course, didn't happen, and it would probably be safe to assume Donald Trump has no idea who Frank Cali or Anthony Comello even are. Now, despite his lawyer's plea, Anthony refused psychiatric evaluation, which initially seemed like it could jeopardize his chances at getting an insanity plea. But despite this, a year later in June of 2020, Mr. Comello was determined mentally unfit to stand trial and was committed to a mental institution where he will probably be spending a very long time, putting an end to this bizarre and completely outlandish story. If you are interested in true crime, criminal justice history, or mysterious stories from around the world, consider subscribing so you can be updated whenever we post something new. I know this was a little bit out of the ordinary for the cases we normally cover, but it was just so absurd we couldn't help ourselves. If you want to support the channel and get behind-the-scenes access to our videos as well as a production credit, feel free to sign up for our Patreon. A link will be available in the description and on our channel page. And of course, don't forget to check the pinned comment on all of our videos for any corrections or additional information that we have regarding the case that was covered. This is Crime Spot, and thank you for watching.